Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this breakout session 3, our last session of the day for the Forum for Excellence 2020, the first day. We wanted to go ahead and welcome you to the conference and welcome you specifically to this session, Rethinking the Purpose of Gen Ed Courses in CTE Programs, presented by Pat Cletty, or Clettle. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Pat. You can correct me. And then Dr. Francesca Catalano. And we are so excited to hear from them today. And then I will be your moderator and tech support for this session. And my name is Kirsten Bayer, along with my colleague, Amy Julian. And we are from the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And we will be moderating the chat in Whova. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please post in the Whova chat as this session is going on. And this session will be recorded and everyone will be on mute for this session. So if you have any questions, just post that in the Whova chat. And then with that, I'm going to hand it over to Francesca and Pat to get us started while I switch our slides. Pat and Francesca, you can take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Pat Cleet. I am the program coordinator for the Electrical Engineering Technology program at Kankakee Community College. And this is definitely the most people I've ever talked in front of. So I am just a little nervous. So please be patient with me. And I hope everybody is finding this as weird as I am. So, hopefully this session will be hopefully very productive for you. And my co-host is Dr. Francesca Catalano, and I will allow herself to introduce herself. I can't hear anybody. Oh.
Pat, can you hear me?
I can hear somebody now, yes. Hello? Well, I will introduce Francesca Catalano because it looks like she may have lost audio. And Dr. Francesca Catalano has been with Kankakee Community College for a while. She is an awesome associate dean of our math and science department, and she has been huge in helping us to create and get this program working for helping us get our Gen Eds kind of figured out for the technology divisions so we can make sure that the students are getting what they want. Yeah, Francesca, do you have audio?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Apologize for that, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Pat. I appreciate you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start off the session kind of talking a little bit about the history of Gen Eds and how they were viewed here in the electrical technology program. So about 12 years ago, we had a dean of academics who believed one of our enrollment problems was that our programs weren't aligned to allow students to actually graduate in 2 years with an associate's degree. Now, this was true and it wasn't true. In small community colleges like ours, maybe ones that you work at, we have a ton of overlap between programs. So we have, you know, an associate's degree in electrical at the time, and they may have to take a couple of classes in, like, let's say, welding, or obviously the Gen Eds. And when we sat down to realign these, we realized that so many things were crisscrossing that a student couldn't actually graduate in 2 years. So my predecessor at the time and the Associate Dean of Business and Technology at the time sat down in a room. They locked themselves away for almost 2 months. And they laid out and redid every single program to make sure that no matter what a student, what program a student was going for, what certification they were going for, they could graduate in 2 years. Now, this was great. This was great. And I remember when they were working on this, and it was a ton of work. But like most things, one person leaves, somebody comes in, and next thing you know, we have a new AutoCAD instructor, and he decides, you know what, I don't want to teach AutoCAD 1 on this day. We're going to teach it at a new time. And we had a complete refresh of administrators at that time, and so no one was really aware of all that hard work. And one of the things that happened during this refresh of the program is they laid out all of the technical courses, and to make sure that everyone could get their technical courses in. And but the problem was, then they came in and they took the Gen Eds and they just filled in spots with the Gen Eds. They weren't thoughtful about how they applied the Gen Eds and where they should be located. They followed the prereqs fine, but they weren't putting the prereqs where they would be there to actually help the students. And so this became a really big problem over time, and it's probably been a problem in our program since the beginning, okay? And I think that really indicates how we feel about Gen Eds. A lot of my coworkers, and I think even myself for a long time, thought of the Gen Ed requirement that was required by the state as kind of a hassle. Well, okay, you know, so we were trying to pick what soft science or what social science class they would take. And somebody just threw out, well, let's have them have sociology. That's a class that's offered very often. Without thinking, well, what class is really the best? And then let's rearrange it in that way. And when should the class be offered to help? And so, you know, we have a physical science course. We had a physical science course in the program at the time. And really, that was all over the place. Some programs would take it the first semester without a math prereq. Other people would be taking it the fourth semester, where at that point, all of the science that they could have used in their technology classes were gone. And so this was a really big issue for a long time, and it's a huge issue to solve, because if you want to redo Gen Eds for our program, realign Gen Eds for our programs, this is going to take a ton of work. You're going to have to buy in from the VP of academics, two associate deans at our program, both of the math and technology, and business and technology, and the math and science. And you'd have to have buy-in from faculty to actually help redo the courses and build them and make sure that they can be offered when they're useful. Okay? And so then the other part of this is, you know, how do tech Gen Eds, how are they thought of in other departments? Well, typically what would happen, and I know this from my time as a student here, all the way through, a lot of times before Dr. Catalano started, they would just throw somebody into the physical science course and even sometimes the math courses, and sometimes they might not have been trained in a specific way to help the students engage in the math and the science in an application-based manner that would allow students to apply it in their tech departments. And so this was a really big deal. And this and I kept seeing the problems, because in the electrical program, we do a lot of math. There is a lot of math, and I don't mean to insult anybody who's in other tech programs, but we tend to do more math than any other program. And so I'm not a math instructor. I'm not good at teaching math. I'm good at applying math to an electrical problem. So I want my students coming in understanding the math side from a math perspective, not having an electrical instructor try to teach them math, because although I can apply it, it wasn't really good. And all of these problems led to a ton of concerns and hesitation with students. A lot of this came to fruition one time when I was standing in our hallway and a student had taken his last electrical course with us. And I thought I had assumed that he was getting his associate's degree at the end of it. And then the next fall, I saw him walking through the door and I said, "Mario, what are you doing here?" I thought you were done. Are you signing up for more classes? This is great. And he said, oh, no, I have to take my physical science course to graduate. And I just remember thinking at that time, well, now what is the point of taking the physical science course? Now he can apply that to the job that he has, but we have to teach math and we have to teach science in our courses. So why can't we set our Gen Ed up in a way that would allow people to want to take the science and the math courses because it's applicable to what they're doing in our classes, but more importantly, applicable to what they're going to be doing out in the field. And so there was, and I think there still is, although we're working on it, some hesitation and concern about students. I've estimated out that there are probably over 60 students or 60 people in the community, if not more, who are maybe 1 or 2 Gen Ed classes away from finishing their associate's degree. That's a tragedy, because what that means is it makes us look like we aren't getting the completion that we needed, while at the same time having concerns that the students aren't having those associate degrees, and it may be holding them back from applying from other jobs, maybe because they're just an English class away or a physical science class away from this. So, to reference the question at the bottom, how could we at the time, and how did we reconsider the Gen Eds for our AA courses so that they are the most meaningful they can be, and so students, most importantly, will tell other students how important they are, okay? So, the next slide here. So, how did things come together so we could make this change? I tried to emphasize in the last slide how much work I knew this would be. And it's nobody's fault that they're hesitant to do this, because we have to have a math person on board, math full-time faculty member, multiple really, probably multiple science teachers, 2 associate deans, and you would have to have the program coordinator of whatever vocational program wanted to do this. So we decided, after I met Dr. Catalano and we got to know each other through a couple of different projects, I realized how open she was and how she really saw the same problems that I did. We didn't like any of the tech math courses, and we didn't like the science course, okay? So what we did, luckily at the time, we had 2 newer faculty members who began to teach both the tech math classes and the physical science class. And it just so happened that not only were they teaching in the program, they were willing to reach out to me and the other program coordinators to say, what should we be doing in these courses? What is the problem? I feel like I'm teaching stuff and it's useless for the students. Some of it was very good, but a lot of it needed to be realigned. So, because Dr. Catalano, my boss Paul Carlson, and the 2 other full-time faculty members who we'll mention at the end, decided that if I was willing to put the time in to work with this and realign the program in a way that would allow the math and science to be taught on the front end of the program, this would really benefit the students, and they were willing to put their own time in to redo these classes. And with that, we began to update the electrical engineering technology program over the 2 years before we presented what I like to refer to as a complete gut rehab of the program. And KCC was amazing during this, and you could see that the administrators, I like to joke, said, absolutely do it, just don't bother me with it. So I didn't bother them with it, and we went out and we cranked it out, and we're already seeing some of the fruits of the labor. Next slide. So I'll let Francesca take it from here.
Oh, thanks, Pat. So I want to talk a little bit about the math classes and the science classes. And Pat, please feel free to jump in, particularly when we get to the sciences. So the state of the union prior to this awesome change that Pat's talking about was this. We had a 3-sequence tech math series. Some colleges have 2, we had 3. The first tech math was really skills-based. So with the exception, I think, for one program, it was not for program credit. It was designed for students who didn't test, who didn't place, basically, in the second tech math. Please keep in mind also at some point in the past, we had a prereq on the Tech Math 1. So now we're looking at potentially two different classes to get students where they needed to be in the actual Tech Math that they're getting credit for, which for the majority of programs was this Tech Math 2. It was coded vocational math. And like I said, almost everybody used it. Now, Pat's program in the electrical tech program had a second math class that they needed, which was a Tech Math 3. And that was coded transfer. So it was a 200 level, if you will, math class. And you had to successfully complete Tech Math 2 to get into 3. So what did we change with the Tech Maths? The first thing we did was reduce the 3 course sequence to 2. And the first course we called simply Tech Math Coded Vocational, and we took away the math prereq, which was super important, again, because it helped to reduce the time and the angst, if you will, and the delays that this class caused in student completion. And when we get to that in a second, when we move on, you can see the course objectives. For those of you who are math people, you can see how we compensated for that. This was coded vocational. And then the third thing, which was super important, I think, on our part, was we aligned it with transitional math. So transitional math is a 4th-year math requirement for high schools. This is a state of Illinois law for those of you who aren't aware of it. If you are aware of it, I'm sure you're really aware of it the way I am. But in a nutshell, it gives high schools a 4th-year math, which is not required. There's 3 different pathways that the high schools can choose, and one is a technical pathway. We align the objectives for our Tech Math to that. So this was really beneficial because students can take this in high school. And because our class is coded as vocational, it's counted as dual credit. So there's some subtleties in there for transitional math. And again, if you're a math person and you want to tease out those details, I'll be happy to talk with you about that. But that was a really important thing for us to align those competencies to the transitional math. And then the second math class was this Tech Math for electrical students. And this is, again, exclusively for PAT students who needed that deeper understanding of math applications, mostly in the electrical math application studies, so electricity, things like that. And it was really important that they had a higher level math. Can I have the next slide, please? So I put this slide in here, not for me to go through all the goals and objectives, but as a record for those of you who might be interested in seeing specifically what we did. If you look at some of the earlier goals and objectives, you could see that they're review basic math skills, and this was a compensation, again, because we don't have a prereq on this class. For a class to be transitional math, there can't be a prereq on it. So we aligned with that as well. And then it goes all the way up to right angle basic trig. So, so we sort of, but not completely, collapsed our old Tech Math 1 into a new class. We took out stuff that the faculty felt that weren't needed, and then made sure to reinforce certain basic skills, including things like finding accurate measurements. So this class has an application basis to it, where students can actually go into some of the tech labs and use equipment and use an actual ruler or other types of tape measures, different types of practical pieces of equipment that you might use in the tech world, and practice on those. So that was really hands-on class. Can I have the next slide, please? So now I want to talk about our tech science class. And I think this was a really innovative class that the faculty put together. I'm really proud of the collaboration we had. We crossed divisions and just the creativity of this class. So what did we have before? We had this introduction to physical science class, and this class well, we still offer it, but it is this transfer level course. It has an IAI code on it, and it has multiple populations of students in it. For example, it had those AAS students, PATS students were in this class for their Gen Ed science core. It had AA students who were in this class to get the general education physical science hours they needed. And because of the IAI code, if you look at that code carefully, that's actually the same code for algebra-based physics. So conceivably, you could have students in this class who are tracking to an AS degree and require algebra-based physics. Not at our college, but at some colleges that might be a science major, like a biology major. So that's 3 very distinct populations in one class, and that's not optimal at all. In addition, this class focused half on physics and half on chemistry. Those are 2 very distinct disciplines in science. And if you had to look at the old objectives, it was really more than a survey course. We really tried to get everything we could in those 16 weeks from both those disciplines. Again, that's not a good recipe for a successful class. It also had a math prereq on it, which made no sense to me. The math prereq was either the old Tech Math 1, which you remember is a skills course, or basic algebra, which is a 9th grade level math. But if you remember, I said the IAI code was an algebra-based physics class, which might imply to you that you need a little bit more algebra than basic algebra. And this was confounding for the science instructors because they wanted to teach this class with more math because of the IAI code. So that was a big mess. And this was obviously not the right science class for these students. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is the applied technical science class that the faculty put together. And again, I've listed the goals and objectives for you, just for your records if you were to download these slides later. And what the faculty did here, and I'm going to ask Pat to flesh this out with more detail, again, is that they worked together as a group. The science faculty who was in charge of a lot of this initial work, Dr. Kava, went to the faculty in the tech area and said specifically, what do you want your students to know? What should I teach them? And she also worked with industry partners. She went out and talked to our major employers, and I believe also industry advisory councils were involved in this discussion. Pat, do you want to jump in and flesh that out a little bit for us?
Yeah, so Kankakee County actually has an extremely diverse manufacturing life here. We have everything from a steel factory to a number of pharmaceuticals to a number of different chemical factories to a number of plastic manufacturers. And so one of the things that was very important in working with Dr. Cow was that we start to teach science in a way that it can be applied. So when they go for a job interview, they understand some of the science and the physics behind melting steel, or how to make vitamins, like vitamin D. And so not only did we want them to learn the basics of science so they can be applied in some of our classes, especially some of our instrumentation and process control courses, which are extremely science heavy, we wanted them to actually be able to go into a job interview and maybe even describe some of the science behind what someone was producing. Because in a factory, I mean, there's science everywhere. And what you'll learn, what I've learned over the time, is that a lot of the good electrical techs that are out there working in these factories, they really understand the science of what's happening. So we wanted them to get a really good base understanding of the science and how it's applied in a factory type setting. And actually, one of the core parts of this class was supposed to be factory tours and actually having people from industry coming in and talking about why the science was so important and how it's applied in the factories. Now, this will kick up once we kind of hopefully move past the pandemic. So we're really excited for this class to be taught for the first time in the spring now. And so we're very excited about it.
Thanks, Pat. And one other thing I want to add, this class is coded vocational, so it is really strictly for the AAS students. You aren't going to have any transfer students in this class. That's it. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah.
We have the next slide, please.
So I kind of wanted to just talk really quick about what our program looked like beforehand and what it looks like now. And so I did a search for about, I think I did 5 or 6 community colleges, and I went and looked at their electrical programs to kind of see how they laid everything out before this presentation. And I was originally going to show some of those, but I decided that I would just show what we did. But I noticed that of the 6 that I looked at, many had their math courses farther down in the semester. Some actually didn't have science courses in it. Like, it would just be like a general chemistry class and things like that. So it's really kind of all over the place what we did. But one of the thoughts, kind of going back to what Dr. Catalano just mentioned, was that the question is how transferable do we want the degree to be? And so when we moved away from the IA classes, we knew that our program would be somewhat less transferable. But the real question is, if I go to a school and I want to know if something's transferable, really, we know it's transferable if it's transferable. And so we'll really see how that works out and plays in the future. But we have had the ability now to start to run through some of those simulations, and they've been pretty positive. So as I mentioned before, I really wanted to move the Gen Eds into very purposeful places where they would be, they would help drive the student in their technical courses, and so we can apply them later and get them ready for industry. So the past here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse or not, but on the left-hand side is the past. So before, they would have 15 hours their very first semester, and the only Gen Ed that was in there was something called Fundamentals of Writing. Now, it turns out a year or two ago, the state came in and said Fundamentals of Writing is no longer counting as a Gen Ed in tech programs. And this was a big issue because we feel that writing is actually pretty important in our program, but they were going to force us to put English 1 in. And what that was going to do was actually add, for some of our students, not all of them, that was going to add a hidden prereq into the program. And then all of a sudden, they actually couldn't graduate in 2 years. So this was a big issue. So we've made some, and that really got myself and Professor John Bordeaux, who's in charge of our AutoCAD program, really looking into what Gen Eds the state truly require. And after talking with our English faculty, they kind of all rolled their eyes at me and said, your students should not be taking English 1. This is not functional. And if this is a 3 or 4 credit hour course, this is taking up a chunk of your program that could be better applied in other ways. So if you can see our first semester here, we kind of scratched that, and we made a lot of other modifications during the gut rehab, if you will. But you'll notice here that right here we have our Math 1103 technical math course. So our students are taking the math course right away. And now again, students have the choice if they want to take the course or not. But I do want to note that this is something that we have already seen the fruit of this labor in a couple of ways. Okay? So the first way we've seen this is our tech math class has higher enrollment than it ever had. And I think this kind of threw some of the administrators for a loop because although I expected that to happen, I expected the point was that to get more students in there more quickly, we're running 3 sections of tech math, which we've never done before. So I think that is very, very cool. The other place we have seen the fruits of this labor is that we have a brand new faculty member, full-time faculty member, who teaches all of our Fundamentals of Electricity course, which you can see is right above the technical math course. And just randomly last week, without me bringing it up, she actually pulled me aside and said, whatever they're doing in tech math is working. I can actually tell which students are in tech math and which students are. Fundamentals of Electricity is very heavy in basic math, but it's basic math that is applied, so it really throws students for a loop. And so she can already tell the difference of students who are in the class and who aren't in the class. So if you roll to the second semester here, you can see that they were taking Tech Math 2 in the second semester of the first year. And the reason it had to be placed there was so many students might have to take Tech Math 1 to qualify to get in. So we backed that out, we took that out, and we added both the technical math for electrical circuitry and the applied technical science into the second semester. So in the program, math gets pretty heavy towards the end of their second semester in the electrical program. We start doing the last 8 weeks is essentially applied, right triangles. And so we have them taking another math course, which will repeat some of the technical math from the first class, but the whole thing is actually, every application is based in an electrical circuit. So there's no what's 4 plus 4. All right, it's okay, you have a 4-foot piece of conduit and you need to go 4 more inches. What's the total piece of conduit that you need to do? And so every question is based in an electrical application to get these students kind of going in the right direction. And they have the applied science course, which is really important because in their second year, they start to branch off into their specialties. And so having this applied science taught so early in the class and having the math already there to kind of boost up that technical science course, they can focus on the science more in those classes and applying that in a way that they're ready to go once they get to some of our classes that hold a little higher science. Next slide, please. And this is a little small. Sorry, I didn't know the best way to present this. So you can see in their third semester, their first semester of their second year, the first semester of their sophomore year, that's when they would take the Tech Math 3 course and the physical science course in the past. And at this point, most of the technical math was at this point useless. Now you're just teaching math to teach math, to make them better at math. And there was very little application to be done about this. And I became pretty close with the instructor who took that over, Dr. Weston, and she came to me and she said, this class needs to be completely redone. And this was one of those things about the timing where we sat down together and we really cranked this out. And I think this class will be taught for the first time in the spring. It'll be very good for a second semester course, not a third semester course. And here's that science course right here. Well, now if you're in your second semester of your second year of a electrical engineering technology program, you want to start focusing on your career goals. It's going to be time for you to start thinking about applying for jobs and learning in the industry, transferring from theory to practice. This is going to become very important. So we moved the math and science up to the first year where we're still dealing with a little bit more of the theoretical or applied theory. And you can see here, we put the business communications in here. Now, I got questioned a little bit on this by some of my some of my administrators, because they thought that the business communication should be in the last semester like it was previously. Well, here was the problem with that. Most of my students start to apply for jobs halfway through their second semester. And one of the main goals of the business communication course is to create a resume and get interview skills. So they would be applying, I would say, hey, everybody, they know you're getting ready to graduate. This place is hiring, apply, send your resume in, or send me your resume and I'll forward it on. And a lot of them were saying, well, I don't have a resume yet. Well, I don't have a resume yet. And so what that created was a situation where we wanted to move the business communication into their third semester so they would have a resume, the core of a resume, and then they can just update it as they go along in their program. So when they're ready to apply for a job, boom, they're ready to go and they're ready to crank it out, which is really, really cool. And for the fourth semester, you can see they were taking their business communication course in the past and a sociology course. And this was a tough one. My students really delayed doing the sociology course almost as much as they were delaying doing the physical science course. And when they took it, it was just a barrage of complaints. They really were frustrated that they were spending, essentially, if you let's just round down and say this is a 60-hour program, they would be using 5% of their program for the sociology course. And although some of them did find it applicable in certain ways. Me going to the sociology course and saying, hey, can we teach this in this way to make it more applicable, wasn't, since that was a transfer level course, that couldn't happen. And we were going to run into some questions about the English course and what prereqs we had that. So fortunately for us, we did have a course that was ready-made and a little more applicable. We had a survey of renewable energy, which is a transfer level Gen Ed now. And that sat in perfectly in the second semester of their second year. And so now they're taking a survey of renewable energy course. And because we were concerned that there wouldn't be enough writing, we worked with my coworker who teaches the course to induce a lot of writing into that course now. And he's actually taken upon himself to become trained at becoming better at editing and teaching that with some of our and we're going to work also with some of the English faculty to help us with that. So we're very excited to see how all of this rolls out. Really, this is a 2-year plan, a 4-semester plan. We're in the first semester of it. We're already seeing the benefits of this. Our enrollment's going higher. Students who are following the path are actually really you're seeing the improvements in their math abilities right from the very beginning. So being applied, and so we're very excited. We're really, really excited to see how all this works out over the next couple of years. And I know it's very hard in academics to assess something over a 10-year span, but we had the ability to look at what was over 10 years, identify the problems, rehab them, and then over the next 10 years, we'll look at this. And then again, in 10 years, if hopefully I'm still around, we'll see any other tweaks that we have to make along the way, or maybe at that time it'll be again another time for another big gut rehab, and we'll do that to make sure the industry is receiving the students that they need, the future employees that they need. So next slide. Francesca, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Pat. So please reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. My information and Pat's information is listed there for you. And we also want to acknowledge Dr. Kaba and Dr. Weston for their support. Dr. Weston was our mathematician. She's moved on. And Dr. Kaba is our physical science and chemistry professor at the college. And they were instrumental in doing a lot of that work that we spoke about. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
We wanted to make the presentation about 45 minutes, so if there were any questions, we could really dive into them as deep as you wanted. So please ask us a question.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, go ahead and post your questions in the Whova chat.
Or you can, post complaints or compliments. Would be okay too.
So we do have a question coming in, and again, please post those in the Whova chat or in the Q&A. We're able to see those in both places. Who were the key people on your team to make these curriculum revisions?
Well, I took the lead on this, and then I worked very closely with Dr. Catalano, Melissa Weston, and Dr. Guao to make all of these revisions happen. And then over a series of events, we took them to our curriculum and academic standards and ran them through. And I presented what could only be described as the biggest book of changes ever presented to CAST before. They were very surprised at how much was going to happen in there. And then Dr. Catalano presented both the math and the science course revision over a number of series. And another person who was very instrumental in this was Dwayne Music, who is the AAS student advisor. And he was great at understanding all of the outcomes of this. Did that answer the question? And Dr. Catalano, was there anything I missed?
No, I think that was it. I mean, it had to be cross-divisional, it had to be faculty-driven, and with administrative support, and the advisor support was instrumental as well.
Excellent. We have another question. Have you received any feedback from employers regarding the curriculum changes? And do you feel the program graduates are more prepared with the changes?
Great question. So a couple of things. Every change that I went through, I brought to our advisory committee. So over about 4 years, I began to present ideas and gather feedback from them. And we made sure that we communicated with them. I've been here for 17 years, so I happen to have a really good relationship with many of the maintenance managers and the electrical managers. So there was also a number of one-on-one conversations. So they were aware of that completely. Whether we know if this will create better technicians at the end, we'll wait and see. Because again, we're only in the first phase. We're only in the first semester of the 4-year program. So we'll have a good idea of how they're doing when they go to test in for jobs with our employers. But another benefit is we actually have a number of factories that send students here during an apprenticeship program. And we've already gotten feedback from the apprentices that they're applying this stuff immediately to their jobs, and that their supervisors in the apprenticeship program have been giving them positive feedback. So the feedback, we haven't heard anything negative at least. So that's really good.
That's excellent. Thank you. Another question we have is, were they, as in the businesses, involved in the design or presented the information after it was completed?
Yes, it was all, I organized it in a way and I presented it to all of the businesses who are a part of our advisory committee, which is a good portion of the factories in town. So all of them actually did do that. They all saw what changes were being made, and they actually had to sign off. I asked them to essentially sign off on it. And they're actually working with our math and science department to help make sure, especially the science department, to make sure this class is really laid out. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think it does. Again, if you have any questions, please post those in the question box and or the session Q&A. And that's all we have at this time, but I'll continue to monitor.
I'll add one other thing, since there's another question, is that we'll continue to discuss this with them twice a year over the next 10 years. And so not only will we discuss this with them at every advisory committee, but also when we do tours and things like that. This will be a constant area of conversation between us, both formally and informally, especially when we do the program review. This will be a big portion of it.
Excellent. We have another question. Have you received any feedback from employers regarding the curriculum changes?
We have received a number of them. Some were a little bit hesitant on some of the tech changes. They were all on board for the math, the science courses changing. They were super enthusiastic about that, and that shows with how much they helped. I did change a lot of the electrical courses, and I received a little bit of hesitation on that. But once it was explained to them, they really felt that it was a good thing to do. As many of you know, shop classes in high schools are struggling like they've never struggled before. And so one of the main complaints that we would get from employers is that students were coming in with a lot of electrical knowledge, but not a lot of skill knowledge as far as using basic tools. And so we modified that, and we now have 3 installation skills courses, and just teaching students how to use basic tools in a electrical application way. And so we've been teaching those classes, and they have just been a ton of fun. So we basically created new shop classes because they've gone away in the high schools.
So that does bring up our next question, which is very well coordinated. Do you try to get any of these tech math courses into your high schools as dual credit?
I'll let Francesca answer that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So because the class is coded vocational, yes, we have right now, I want to say about 30% of our feeder high schools use this as dual credit. And then again, because it's coded vocational, to qualify an instructor is a lower threshold for a high school. So in general, for a dual credit IAI course or any other course that's non-vocational transfer course, the instructor has to have a master's or 18 hours in the field plus another master's. So because this is vocational, an instructor with a 4-year degree like any other math teacher would have in a high school setting can teach the class. So it becomes, again, very, very attractive for our high school partners. And it's a great segue into KCC as a community college by saying, hey, look, you can do your math in high school and never have to, with the exception of Pat's program, take math again if you don't like math. So it's a very good question. It was a very great opportunity for us to better support development of dual credit in high schools and give students more options.
And the advantage of that is the students will actually come into their electrical courses and their tech with all of the math instead of doing it concurrently when we do a dual credit situation. So it is a really win-win when we can get that. Would you agree, Francesca?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because math is probably, I don't know, Pat, but I think it's probably one of the barriers for a lot of students. So by getting that done in high school and bringing them in, they're already feeling more confident and prepared for their electrical courses.
Agreed. And, you know, I would say that math is the one course that I see students have almost an emotional reaction to. You know, I can't do it, you know. And so as we can get past that I can't do it, where they're just so incredibly intimidated by it, it's gonna make a huge difference, not only in their program, but also in the rest of their life. So it's pretty cool.
Great, and building on that, we have a question of, do you feel the students seem to think that what they are doing in these classes is directly and clearly applicable to their future workplace? They're interested in the perception, if there's a perception change noted with the changes that you've made to the curriculum.
100%. 100%. The students are now working with their hands first semester. They're taking what they're doing in their math classes, they're applying it directly to their electrical courses. They're doing things out the very first day in some of our, especially our installation skills courses, that they've seen out in their just normal lives. So they're applying hands-on skills right away, sooner than they've ever done it before. And our retention rate in these classes has been extremely high. We have 3 of them, and we've only lost, we have 36 students roughly, and we've only lost 1, which is almost unheard of for us. And so that's been really, really great. So I think the students really do see how this is directly applicable because we're emphasizing that as well. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. That appears to be the end of our questions for this afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. And with that, I'm going to kind of close us out here, but I did want to open it up to Pat and Francesca if you had any closing comments or thoughts before I close us out.
Well, I would just like to thank everybody for listening. I hope it was helpful and informative. It was a lot of work, but I think in the end, when you're working with people like Dr. Catalano, it's actually very fulfilling. And it's one of the things I think that I'll walk away with my career, hopefully, that I'll be something I can hang my hat on when I'm eventually out of here.
Yeah, I would like to say the same thing. It's been a pleasure working with Pat and the rest of the team on this. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you if you're interested in doing something similar or just have a burning question. It's been great to talk to you all today. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending today. Please be sure to complete the end of session evaluation, which you can find. Oop, I must have skipped that slide. That's okay though, but you can find it on the Whova app at the end of the session. So please evaluate this session, tell us what you thought so we can determine for future sessions. And then please follow us on social media. So we have the Illinois Professional Development Network social media, as well as the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support social media, using those hashtags, and the ICCB social media as well. Also engage with us with the photo mosaic wall. Watch the mosaic wall come live together, and this will be on Friday, September 25th, tomorrow. I apologize for that date. And you can actually view that coming live together on the agenda. And then I just wanted to put a plug in and thank our sponsors for helping us put on the Forum for Excellence. We could not have done it without them. And with that, I'm going to close this out. Thank you so much, Pat and Francesca, and all of our attendees for today. We appreciate you bearing with us, and this is the end of the conference today. Please join us for trivia tonight. We do have a trivia that's going to be live and interactive. It's also family friendly if you would like to get your family involved, and that is from 6 to 8 p.m. tonight, I believe. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.